Hello everyone and welcome to the Gear of the Week show here on the Golf Front, the YouTube channel. You join us at the London Club today in person, which is nice, isn't it? And I'm joined by Gear of the Week regular, Joel Tadman. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Dan.
Good to see you. Yeah. And for his debut, Martin Hopley. Welcome to the Gear of the Week show.
Thanks, Dan.
Exciting episode today. We're going to chat about putters and utilities in particular, because Martin, you've tested a lot of them this year. And then we're going to have a debate or a discussion about how often you should be updating your driver with some new releases due very soon. It's an exciting time of year, isn't it? So we'll chat about that toward the end of the episode. Keep an eye out for that. But first, as always, on the Gear of the Week show, has to be a quiz question to start to get us going. And as we're at the London Club today, chaps, I'm going to make it London Club themed. So, the London Club has hosted a number of events across a couple of tours since it was opened in the 90s. Can you name one of those events, so the name of the event, and can you name a winner of any event for a bonus point? So it's been across the two courses, the Heritage and the International, it's had events. So do you know any?
Yeah, I mean, I could name 2 events and 2 winners.
Oh wow,
across
okay,
the 2
Martin.
courses. So
Well, I can give a go at that, yeah.
Right then, go on then, Joel.
Do you want me to
seem
go
really
first?
confident. Yeah, just for viewers, by the way, memorabilia is kind of plastered in the halls of the clubhouse with winners. So
jogs some memory as I walk past.
Yeah, I thought it might be a bit of an easy one. Go on then.
Yeah. So they had the European Open here, which was run by none other than Christian Sever.
Wow.
A very random French golfer who did nothing else during his career.
And that's all he won. Because I saw that on the Wikipedia page and I thought they're not going to get that, they might get the second one. Can you name the second European Open winner?
I can, but maybe I'll leave that for Martin.
Go on, Martin.
Go on, so yeah.
Well, yeah, I've seen this picture around. I'm going to say it was Ross Fisher, isn't it?
There you go. Yeah, that's the thing. I sort of thought it won't be too easy because Ross Fisher is on a big picture near the locker rooms.
But I remember on the other course, they had the Volvo match play.
They did.
Won by Mikko Ilonen.
Wow. Some good knowledge coming out here. Do you know who came runner-up to that?
Stenson.
Wow. Yeah, correct.
I think I was here hospitality watching the final.
Oh, well, that helps, doesn't it, when you're getting treated to a nice day out.
Good question, though. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So yeah, Mikko Ilonen won the Volvo World Match Play, running by Henrik Stenson. They've had some PGA Senior Championships there. You got a winner there.
Well, yeah, you stole my thunder. I was actually at that event as well. So I was going to say Mikko Ilonen. I think Philip Price won one of the senior editions, didn't he?
2019.
There you go. Between us, we're London Club experts.
Really? Absolutely rattling through the Wikipedia page, basically, here.
And it is a lovely golf course, for the record. We're inside because it is a bit rainy today.
Not the greatest day for it, is it?
In the sunshine, it's a lovely course to play. Well, both of them are.
So the match play was one on the international course, and the European Open was on the heritage course. So, yeah, excellent. Well, I thought I had you both there, but clearly
you've got to get up earlier in the morning
the
to be
European tour from 2009 onwards is good. Okay, well done. Let us know if you got that at home, and if I stumped any of you at home, because clearly too easy for you boys. Okay, right, let's crack on with this episode then. And we're chatting specificirally about putters and utility irons today, because Martin, you have tested a heck of a lot over the last year. Have you enjoyed that firstly? 2 different ends of the bag. Do you enjoy testing putters and utilities?
Yeah, it's sort of a lot less physically demanding than drivers. But yes, no, it has been good actually. And it's been interesting to see the sort of full breadth of putters that have been coming out in the last year.
Yeah, so we chat about putters to start then. Which one did you crown as your champion in 2022, Martin? You can find that video on the YouTube channel, but remind everybody which one you went for.
At the end of the day, the one I felt came out top for me was the Scotty Cameron Phantom X, and it was 11.5 actually I went for.
Yeah, that's that sort of compact fan.
Yeah, so it's kind of a high MOI head, but and then there's a choice of a single bend or a short hosel, depending on how you want the face balanced or not. So I kind of like the one that wasn't face balance, so you've got a bit of a toe hang in it. It's not full toe hang, it's about sort of 30 degrees or so. And that's a sort of trend I'd seen coming into putters probably over the last few years, but it almost seems like it's accelerated where you've got a high MOI head with that shorter hosel to create a little bit of toe hang. Because in the past it was kind of high MOI face balanced or blade toe hang, and it was either or. But now many more brands are sort of doing that mix and match, and you can have a bit of everything, really.
That's interesting that they found that middle ground. Would you agree with that, Joel?
Yeah,
Do you like that sort of trend you're seeing, and would you agree with that being one of the best putters this year?
I agree. It's a great putter. I think it helps if you're transitioning from a blade to a mallet. If you want a bit more forgiveness, but you don't want to trade off the flow and the feel of a blade with that toe hang, it's a good option to try, and you get the extra alignment assistance that you don't get from a blade, so it's an easier transition now.
Yeah, do you think we see more people go to mallets? Do you think it's becoming a more popular choice? Because need the stability. I like a double blade, you know, when it's like a blade and a half.
So that's what I use. Yeah,
that's a middle ground.
Every brand seems to be launching more mallet-heavy ranges these days. It seems to be the trend that more golfers are turning to mallets. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Martin.
I certainly would. And you've even seen that on tour, where we probably would never have seen a mallet, 15 or 20 years ago. So some of these events we were talking about, whereas now the vast majority of people are doing it as well.
Yeah, interesting, because I like a mallet. I need that sort of that help for sure. So speak about your favourite putter. Are there any putters that you've tested this year, either of you, that you feel need a bit of a shout out, that maybe a bit underrated or don't get as much airtime as some of these bigger names?
I think there was a few that were maybe slipped under the radar in as much. So a lot of putters, certainly the ones I tested this year, were very expensive. I mean, everything was £250 or more. And whilst it's the main brand, I mean, the Odyssey White Hot OG, for under £200, if you went for the steel shaft, there's a lot of great heads in there. And I think that was, if you want a good quality putter, then that was definitely one of them.
Because that's got a great face insert in it as well. I think a lot of people can go with that.
Very popular on tour as well. A lot of people are using that.
So on tour, they use the Stroke Lab shaft, right? And does that bring the price up a little bit?
It does, yes. But not all of them do. It's kind of better than to feel, really, because it does change the weight of the putter as you're stroking it a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was chatting to people the other day about putter prices, especially. You're saying a lot of them are north of £250, $250. That space from £100 between that and $250 seems to be a bit sparse at the minute. Are there any you can think of, Joel, that might fill that gap and give you the quality, but you're not forking out a heck of a lot of cash for it?
Yeah, in the past, I think Cleveland have made some sneaky good putters. They've just launched the new HB Soft range, which has an RRP of $250, but you might be able to get it for slightly less than that. And I think you get a lot of putter for your money within that range. There's a lot of good shapes in there, a lot of good alignment assistance, and quite a cool milled face, actually, which essentially speeds up off-centre hits and slows down centre hits, so you get quite consistent distances from a putter that costs less than £250. I think you get a lot for your money.
I want to give a shout out to the Wilson Infinite range. I use the Buckingham, which is like the sort of faux spider one, basically. And you can get that now for about £100. And not only has that got the stability of the mallet head, feels really nice off the face, great alignment assistance from those sort of three lines going through the back of it. And actually, I bought that myself one day because I forgot my putter. I was playing somewhere. The pro shop I was playing at very kindly lent it to me, even though it was on the shop floor, so I was a bit weird. Putted the lights out with it, so I bought it off them, and I really enjoyed it.
It's got a great grip as well, a really nice shape and size of the grip.
A flat front of it, so you keep your thumbs nice and straight down it. And that's another one that sits in that south of £150 mark that is actually quite high quality. Are there any budget ones, Martin? Like I'm talking, maybe south of £150 or dollars. I know you tested McGregor this year, and there's an Inesis we were testing yesterday from Decathlon that was about $150. What are your thoughts on that? Does the quality really drop off, or is there sort of a middle ground to be found?
Certainly those Inesis ones, I don't think the quality did drop off too much, actually. I mean, there was the mallet that was $150, and then there's some blade options which were actually about £100.
There you go, yeah.
So they were very well made. The bounce was really nice. I think they looked pretty good as well.
Yeah.
And they had a very good grip in it, which they've kind of gone towards these pistol grips because they reckon you hold more putts with a pistol grip, so maybe that's something to try out as well.
There's one for a debate potentially, or even a test of some sort. Do you hold more putts with a pistol grip?
Well, you could do.
I think grips are like one of the most underrated parts of a putter because it's the first thing you touch when you get. And if you like the feel of it, sometimes straight away you just I like the feel of this grip, and therefore what's on the other end doesn't matter as much because if you feel comfortable in your hands, you're probably going to putt quite well with it.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of these lesser brands have really good grips on, I think, to kind of entice golfers to try and choose them.
That's a really good point, actually, because I think some brands in the past, the sort of real budget ones, have skimped on the grip potentially and gone, right, let's focus on the head, and then your only contact point with the club is this weak little, thin grip. Sometimes doesn't feel too great. That's an interesting one. There was a McGregor you tried, Martin, this year that I want to talk about because you used it in a competition, I think, didn't you?
Had a go around with it.
Just to see how it would go.
Well, it was, and you've got to. I guess it's getting it fit for your stroke as well. But I did check it out and did some stats. It wasn't far off. I don't think it was quite for me, but it doesn't mean it was a bad putter. I think it was a good value for money option. And as you've discovered with your putter, it's really what works for you, what maybe suits your stroke and suits your eye that is the putter to go for.
Yeah, and that's the value of a fitting, isn't it? I think we harp on about this a lot on all of our videos, but the importance of a fitting. And I don't think enough people probably go for a putter fitting. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and I think it's whether fitting from the brands maybe isn't as comprehensive for that as it is for drivers. It depends if you want to go and have a sand putting lab and see the roll of it, or whether it's more to get the length right and the flow, as they call it, or how the face closes, whether that's right for you, what type of alignment lines you like.
Isn't there?
I mean, it is a wee bit never ending, but that's the beauty of it. It is worth going to get professionally fit, no doubt about it, particularly for the length and the lie and the sort of type of head that you're going for, as we discussed earlier. So I would definitely recommend doing it.
And it is all about which one you prefer, because I know on a recent episode of Gear of the Week, we spoke about where you should maybe spend or save in the bag. And Joel, if you're thinking about where to save, a putter's one, because it's so down to preference that you can find a cheap one that will still suit your game, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think putter fitting, I agree with you, Martin, that it's worth doing, but I think sometimes you can be told what one works the best, but deep down you might prefer another one because just for how it looks or
it's the most
how
personal
it feels.
part of the game, putter, isn't it? You can get one that it doesn't work for you on paper, but it's a feel one, right? It just works.
Yeah, and you are seeing more brands coming out with sort of fitting kits, which most pros or retailers can use. So Sick Golf is one in particular. PXG is another one where they've basically put any hosel into any head and then any length of shaft into that hosel. So you've got unlimited opportunities, but it does give you that flexibility to pick the style of putter and the hosel that you want to suit your game.
Yeah, I went to a Sick putter fitting this year. It was quite compelling, actually. That form of a putter fitting was really, really cool. So lots to choose from putters, but do check out Martin's Best Putters video on the YouTube channel. There were a lot tested, I think, so you'll find one for any style of putting out there. Let's move on to utilities then, because you've tested a lot of them this year as well. Hands up, I hate utility clubs. Never had one in the bag, don't really intend on one.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of personally.
Uphill fight here, Martin.
Yeah, it's just me.
It's just you, I think. Where do they fit? Where do they fit into the bag? Because someone might not know what a utility club is. Sort of describe it. What does it do? Why would you have one over a certain other type of club in the bag?
I think they're probably in the category of hybrids.
Yeah.
So if you imagine it, but they're probably coming from the iron side of things rather than the wood side of things. So they are irons which are built up a little bit more. They've usually got deeper heads or a lower center of gravity to help get the ball a little bit more airborne.
Yeah.
I say it probably depends on the level of golfer that you are. If you're a sort of mid to high handicap golfer, you can almost get those properties from a cavity back iron. So if you went to like a 4, or if they still make them, a 3 iron in
a cavity back set, like
correct, like a game improvement set.
For sure, yeah.
And I've even used, even better players can use those as well because they're just so easy to hit.
Yeah.
I think where these utility irons fit in is for better players who want to use them more as a driving irons. These aren't really clubs to hit into a green because they don't really launch high enough unless you've got enough swing speed.
Yeah.
They're there for accuracy and if you're hitting off a tighter lie as well. So single figure players and downwards, certainly players with higher swing speeds because they do tend to go a little bit straighter than most hybrids because most hybrids are geared to probably go a little bit right.
I was going to say, there's some people just don't get on with hybrids because they tend to go left, or some people just prefer to look down on a more iron-like shape than a wood-like shape. So it's just, well, if you don't get on with the hybrids, this is the alternative, essentially.
Yeah, you don't have one in the bag, do you?
No, so I've got a hybrid.
Hybrid instead. I'm a hybrid man instead. Well, do you carry one?
I do actually, yes. Particularly when it's, I play a lot of links courses, when it's hard and fast.
They're perfect for that, aren't they?
They are great because you're not worried about carrying those instances. Because the ball is running so much, it's really just about getting the thing going in a straight line.
Yeah.
So they're really ideal for that sort of stuff. But some of the higher lofted ones can replace 4 or even a 5 iron in your set if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot more now actually, is they're not just 2 and 3 irons. There are 4 and even 5s in these options as well.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of examples on the table here. I want you to talk first. Well, I would like you, I won, that was a bit rude, about the eye crossover from Ping here, because I think it's caught a lot of people by surprise in so much as it's adjustable, which is an interesting factor. And I quite like the black finish as well. So what have been your impressions of this club in particular?
I think compared to the previous one, it is maybe a little bit narrow in the soul. So going back to said about playing these types of courses and behaving a bit more like an iron, that's where that comes in. I think it's one of the few that is still adjustable. There was a Cobra, but I'm not sure if that's going to continue next year. And that particular one has got a bit more offset than most, and it will fly a little bit higher than most, even though it still looks quite like a blade. So I think for those reasons, I quite like it. I know you've had a go of it as well.
Yeah, no, I really like it. I think the previous version, as you mentioned earlier, that these are aimed at better players. And I think the previous one was a bit too large. I think it didn't really suit the eye.
It's their eye range now, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And they've hidden the adjustability really well, I think. Down at address, as you say, it's got a bit of offset, but they've hidden the adjustability really well. And you can adjust loft up and down and lie angle as well. So you can really dial it in to to hit a certain ball flight and also a certain carry number. You know, this is a really important club in terms of gapping between your longest iron and your fairway wood. This is probably going to do that better than most other utility irons out there in terms of hitting a very specific distance.
And the black finish, chaps, Marmite, or is it going to?
I like it. I like the lighter face as well. It just kind of highlights the
that will frame
alignment
the
a bit
ball
more.
really nicely, won't it, actually, that black finish, and it differentiates it from the rest of your iron set. Then most of probably.
It depends. If you want it to blend in, obviously it probably wouldn't do that. But if you like it to stand out a bit more, obviously that's going to do that.
Exactly. And we've got here the Stealth UDI.
I think Martin's going to talk about that. There's a lot of technology packed into this club. It's an absolute rocket launcher.
Break it down for us. Yeah, is it just a rocket launcher? Is it just going to go miles and miles?
Well, essentially, because when you test this cat, there were a lot of tailor-made clubs in there, and they're probably one of the few manufacturers have almost touched a lot of the bases in this particular category. I thought this grind scene, and this is probably a good example of how these clubs fit. So you've got the UDI here, and then there's a DHY, which is a little bigger head and a little bit more forgiving.
Okay.
Now, when I went in to do the testing here, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have the bigger, more forgiving one. Thank you. But this UDI actually performed better. And the reason was because the head was a little bit narrower and shallower, I was actually able to get into the back of the ball more easily for the way I was hitting it. With the broader sole, just the way I was delivering it, it didn't really work. So it was a good example of how you can't necessarily go with what you first think.
Definitely. And
the advantages of being fitting. So actually, whilst it wouldn't be visually my first choice, it is quite compact, but actually it was performing really well and was surprisingly forgiving for the type of club that it is.
Interesting. And for anyone sat at home now watching thinking, should I get a utility? Have you got any tips and tricks for them? Would you say replace a hybrid, add it next to a hybrid? Would you say depends on your swing speed, as you mentioned, your handicap? What are some tips and tricks for maybe getting one of these in the bag?
I think it's if you can go to someone who can do fitting this, because it's really gap fitting, but at the other end of the bag.
Yeah.
Because you're transitioning from irons into woods or even into hybrids potentially, and you don't want two clubs doing the same thing. They might go the same total distance, but they might do it in different ways. So the hybrid might have more carry, whereas this might have more run. So then it goes back to what time of the year you're playing at, what courses you're playing at. You mentioned my bag is usually in there in the summer.
Yeah, for sure. You wouldn't need it today, I don't think, for example. It would be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. So that would be one thing I would go for. I think it's understanding what gap you want to carry or what type of shot you want, whether you do need it for accuracy or whether you're needing more forgiveness, and also the look that you prefer as well.
I can't see one going in my bag anytime soon.
Yeah, no, just to follow up on what you said, Martin, I think it's course dependent. So if you do need to keep the ball flight down, if you play a lot of courses that are quite exposed to the weather, quite windy, the utility iron is going to produce a flatter ball flight, which can be better. So I think test a hybrid and a utility iron side by side, see which ball flight is going to work for you. Because if you've got a lot of long approach shots into greens, you're probably going to want a hybrid that's going to deliver a high ball flight, more stopping power versus a utility iron, which is more biased towards tee shots, I would say, versus hybrids, which are better for approach shots into greens. So like long par threes, reachable par fives, perhaps a hybrid would be better.
There you go.
Yeah, and the hybrid has the other advantage of being, if you're in a semi-rough or you're playing a course with a lot of that, that's going to probably perform a little bit better out of that.
Yeah, what are these like out of a bit of a dodgy lie? They're still hittable, would you have to be quite skilled?
I think it depends on which one you've got. I think some of the broader ones, so like there was a Wilson one in there, which is very forgiving. There's some of the Titleist with a broader sole, that other TaylorMade that I mentioned. They will work quite well. Some of the bladed ones probably not so much.
Interesting. I think a lot of good advice there for people. Like I said, I'm sticking clear.
You're tempted though,
nearly. But let us know if you use one of these, you have one in your bag, or are you thinking about it, and has that helped you out? Let us know down in the comments. Some really useful stuff there. Okay, let's move on to a bit of a discussion then, because it's that time of year. New drivers are on the horizon. That's all we can say, I think, for now. And it's a very exciting time. It's nice to have a nice new shiny product. But I think a lot of people are going to ask themselves, how often should I upgrade my driver? Often there aren't some obvious signs. They're very marginal. With generation drivers, what do we think? If someone's got a 4-year-old driver, is now the time? Martin, what do you think on this? How often should people be updating their driver specifically?
I think if you were staying with a particular brand, then probably every second or third generation of each brand would work, unless obviously you're not performing particularly well. And that's where sometimes these shot tracking systems that are around, ShotScope, Arcuses of the world can help you figure that out. If you're going across brands, then it's probably a similar sort of timescale, if you like, because these guys are, they spend a lot of time, a lot of money designing these things, and there are some big changes in technology, and even in the way they weight these things to try and get you the optimum flight, because that is what's going to give you the best performing club.
Yeah, and it's presuming someone's got the right driver for their game at the minute, Joel. What do you think on this? Let's presume they got fitted, and they like their driver. Let's talk specifically about where technology goes. How long do you think it takes before the marginal gains might become a bit larger with a new driver?
No, I mean, I completely agree with Martin. I think every 2 or 3 generations, we tend to see in our testing significant jumps in performance overall in terms of average carry distances and ball speeds, whereas generation to generation it's very minor. We see definitely forgiveness levels increase more than ball speed and distance from generation to generation. So they definitely become more playable every time they launch. And obviously, different manufacturers launch at different times. So we have Titleist and Ping moving to 2-year cycles, TaylorMade, Callaway in 1-year cycle. And I think that extra year of development, you could argue you get a little bit more from generation to generation, but not that much. So I think I would agree if your driver is 3 or 4 years old, you're definitely in the kind of the tick zone, the green light zone for seeing tangible gains, whether it's accuracy, distance, or a bit of both from upgrading to a new driver. But I think if you've got the latest one, you're probably not going to see a great deal.
No, you're still probably getting used to that one anyway, right? It's only a year old, so
true.
Keep it in the bag for a little bit. For someone watching at home now who might be in that range, let's say they've got G400.
Good driver.
Great driver, right? But that came out in 2019? Time is I've got no idea.
We'll
a while
go
ago
that,
now.
yeah.
It'll be a few generations soon. What can those sort of people, those kind of drivers, be looking out for that might suggest to them that their performance is lacking a bit, maybe compared to playing partners, or that the driver's just got a bit old, or it's time for an upgrade?
This is a good example because since that driver, Ping have introduced movable weight into their drivers, right? So you're immediately sacrificing the ability to kind of fine-tune your ball flight in terms of shot direction and where your balls are finishing. So that would be a starting point, and there's a lot of other brands that now offer movable weight in their drivers. So,
and then let's say you've got a TaylorMade M2, all of a sudden we're in the carbon wood age, Martin, and all of a sudden there's red faces knocking around. So you're feeling like perhaps you've fallen behind the 8 ball a little bit. Is that a sign?
Or you're decoloring faces now.
Yeah, but big aesthetic changes. Do you think that's the time to go? Oh, let's have a change, just because they want to?
Well, just because is not a bad reason for doing it. And
No,
I think
I
what
agree.
you said earlier, I think some of it is when you see people who you might regularly be level with or ahead of suddenly becoming level with you or being ahead of you.
I know,
and that's probably a bit of a driver. I think some people like the latest, greatest. And I think in the vast majority of cases, people should upgrade. There are 1 or 2 drivers I know that we've tested over time that do stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And I know when you're going to fitters, you to go in this driver and go, oh my goodness, I'm not sure I can beat that one.
Yeah.
But more often than not, they can. And it is the fact that there's extra features, as Joel just mentioned. You've got the ball changing as well. Ball changes every couple of years, and they spin at different rates. So that's why if your driver is certainly more than 3 years or 3 generations old, that's why the performance will differ, because the balls have changed as well, and the drivers will be designed to work with the balls of the day.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought of that. And when I used to fit people for golf clubs, I'd get that person occasionally saying, right, this has been my game for ages. I love it. You're not going to find something that beats it. And that was then a personal challenge for me to find something. And like you said, often you would, just because if it was 3 or 4 years old, there is that technology. And I know it's hard for sometimes for people to get their heads around a lot of the jargon that comes out, and they go, what does that technology actually mean? It is worth, I think, if you're sat at home with a 3 or 4 generational driver, just to go for a fit-in. And even if you don't get anything, you've at least tried it, right? Would you say that?
Yeah, I think if you get fit for a new driver, you're going to see gains in somewhere, whether it's ball speed, whether it's a drop in spin, whether it's a bit more accuracy. But you've got to just weigh up whether it's actually worth that investment. Is an extra 2 yards really going to transform your driving on your particular course?
Yeah.
Probably not. But if it's a bit longer and a bit straighter, and you've got a slightly stronger ball flight, you're ticking more boxes, and therefore you can start to justify the investment a bit more. Because the drivers are expensive; it's a lot of money.
No denying that.
It also places kind of a focus on how you value money. Do you like to have it, or do you like to spend it?
Right.
That's another factor to consider. But I think if the more boxes you can tick, the more you can justify in your head. Actually, this is probably worth it now.
And that forgiveness improvement every year, do you reckon? Or every generation, that's what the brands focus on, isn't it? So if you're spraying it a bit, now might be the time.
I think, forgiveness and clubhead speed as well is another way that, brands are limited to what they can do with the face, but they have more scope in terms of trying to make drivers more aerodynamic to help people swing it faster, whether that's through the head design or lighter, more different kind of flex profiles on the shaft, that sort of thing.
last one then, is it worth, perhaps if you're someone with an older driver, maybe your swing speed has changed, whether up or down, just altering the shaft perhaps, go for a fit in and see if you can buy an aftermarket shaft? Is there much argument there? Instead of upgrading the whole thing, just doing the middle part, I guess?
I think you're right. It's definitely worth checking on the shafts as you get older. Then that will drop off. But buying an aftermarket shaft off the shelf, if you like, can almost be more expensive than buying a new club.
It can be actually, can't it? That's a fair point.
So it's probably, again, going back to, you need to get some data on this, obviously, and I think going to a pro or a retailer that can do all this, then that can be the way out of it, and you might find that the new shaft coming with the new head is probably the cheaper, better option.
Pros do often offer like a refit or a spec check, so you can hit your current driver and just to reaffirm if those numbers are still where they need to be, and if your swing's changed slightly or you've changed ball, maybe as Martin mentioned, potentially a tweak in the settings or a different head might produce better results.
Yeah. Well, the settings is a good thing. I mean, it's not only just the shaft. I mean, the shaft can still work, but as Joe was talking about, the extra adjustability options that come into heads, you might not need to change the shaft. You could change the loft, you can move the weights, and that could have the same effect.
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke about adjusting drivers on another episode of Gear of the Week, and it's best if you do that with a pro or someone to hand, I think, because you can get a bit out of hand. But lots of exciting drivers coming next year. So will you be tempted into a new one? Let us know for 2023. Or do you have an old game that you love? We'd love to hear from you down in the comments. But chaps, I think that about wraps it up this week. Joel, thank you for joining me again.
Been a pleasure.
See you in person in the lovely setting of the London Club.
Yep.
Martin, how was your debut? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you same time next week.